Community Motors West Side, the GM Superstore next to Cinema West. Community Motors of Mason City, we give you more.
First of all, assuming a successful CES project, nobody at the landfill loses a job, and I think that's pretty important. That's been a concern since July of last year. Secondly, with respect to why don't we do it ourselves, Larry made a point. We don't have $35 million. And I think what's important to remember about the $35 million investment is nobody in North Iowa has any money in the game. The risk is entirely on private investors. So if the project fails, there's no risk to anybody in North Iowa. It's all on private investors. And the same holds for the waste stream. They have access to the same information on waste stream that we have. If there are people that are willing to make a $35 million private investment in this project based on the projected waste streams, it's not our problem if we can't supply enough trash. That's their business model, and if they're not successful, that's their problem. I met with Bill last October, and one of the key questions that was asked in that meeting is, let's assume worst case scenario. Let's assume that CES has a catastrophic failure for whatever reason without any notice whatsoever. An engineering failure, a technical failure, weather related, a tornado takes out the plant. Pick your poison. Could the landfill, on a moment's notice, be back in production taking all the municipal solid waste the very next day? And the answer was yes. I had a follow-up question. Is there any capital that we would spend to close a cell or otherwise prep the landfill, given an 83% projected reduction in waste stream because of the diversion of waste to an alternative facility? And he said no. So we have no capital to prepare for a CES facility. We have no people losing their jobs, and we know that we could be open the very next day if there were a catastrophic failure. We have no financial risk. We have no risk to our waste stream. To me, what I see as a potential economic driver, I see an 83% reduction in waste stream, and we continue pulling in the same tipping fees. That's a huge opportunity for us to raise capital and maybe do some of the things that we've been talking about for a decade or two, like put in capital equipment to maybe recapture some of the methane. Maybe 3 or 4 years down the road, we want to talk about a reduction in tipping fees for our communities. I think first we would need to get the project online and prove to ourselves for a year that we can coexist and that there's not going to be any surprises that we haven't foreseen. I also heard during the presentation that with good engineering and design, the environmental concerns go away. I heard that once with gasification, I heard it once with pyrolysis. This project has been flushed through a very thorough sieve of planning and zoning, and the environmental concerns have been addressed to a point to where there's 30 contingencies on the permit, even before it came to the landfill tonight. After this body approves it, if this body approves it, it goes to the DNR. If it survives that sieve, this will be the most permitted project in North Iowa. I don't see where there's any risk or any genuine concern that we should have at this point in time. I do have, when you deem it appropriate, Mr. Chair, a comment or two specific to the agreement that's in front of us.
Yeah, the agreement's going to be a separate area.
Okay.
Next,
Thank you. The original CES project that was brought before the LNI in the very early stages, they wanted basically to pay a $25 tip fee, which was $5 less than the current tip fee. Similar, different, but similar to what we just considered on Bear. They saw that there would be some resistance to a $5 reduction in the tip fee, and the proposal that's on the table now is $30 a ton, just like everybody else is paying right now. And their financial model is based on paying $30 a ton. In fact, they had to rework their financial model because originally their payback was based on paying $25 a ton. So they've already been sensitive to some of the needs of the landfill out here, and we're able to execute this project at $30 a ton. The $100 a ton that we saw on the slide was just averages for what you see across the industry, across the country. I think one of the reasons this project is economically feasible in North Iowa is because of our lower tipping fees. It helps them with their capital outlay and their financial model and their payback.
Yeah, Scott, just to correct you, they're not going to pay anything for the garbage. The $25 or $30 a ton is going to be collected by the landfill. They are not paying us, and we're not paying them.
True. Let me clarify. Let me clarify what I mean. It all ends up at the same You end up at the same place. They're proposing to subsidize a landfill scale operator to work at the CES facility to the tune of what, $30,000 a year in a subsidy? And indeed, they're suggesting that the landfill operator run the scales, run the tickets for everything that goes across there to keep track of the tonnage. And then, yeah, we end up right back at the same point, $30 a ton coming to the landfill based on what's run across the scale. In effect, it ends up being the same thing.
Well, not really, because they're not paying us.
They're not, but every community in Iowa is.
But your statement was that CES was gonna pay us, and they're not.
You're right, that's
all I want to make
that
sure.
is, you're correct. The landfill doesn't lose a dime based on tonnage.
Thank you.